Okay, I want to welcome everyone to our Illinois State Freight Advisory Council meeting. My name is Brenda Anderson, and I am the Intermodal Planning Specialist for the Bureau of Planning. And let's see, if you haven't already, if you just wanted to take a moment to scan our Slido barcode there, our QR code, and just so we can get an idea who all's joining us today and where all you're coming from. And let's see. Okay. But before we get started, I just have some safety briefing that I want to go over with everyone for those that have joined us in person. The location for the restrooms, the men's, women's, and gender neutral bathrooms are at both ends of the hall. So to the south and north end, once you step out of the auditorium. And in case of an emergency, call 911 to notify first responders. And our address is 2300 South Dirksen Parkway. And we're here at the Hanley Building in the basement auditorium. And there are automatic external defibrillators in each of the hallways by the escalators right outside the main doors. And any kind of emergency will be announced over the intercom. So if that does happen, just please listen and follow the instructions. And if we are directed to evacuate for any reason, we are to meet across the street in the parking lot. And we urge everyone to not use the elevators. And in the event of an active shooter situation, run, hide, fight, commit to your actions, and again, listen to instructions over the intercom. So, okay, so our meeting is being recorded. And for everyone that is attending virtually, we ask that you please mute your phones. And for everyone that's here that has joined us in person, we ask that you do sign in. The sign-in sheets are back in the back of the auditorium. Okay, and if you do have any questions during any presentation, we just ask that you use the chat box and the speaker or moderator will address them. And at the end of the meeting, we will have our roundtable session where you can speak. If you want to raise your hand, just wait to be called on. And if not, you can again use the chat box to submit your questions. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started. We have a great agenda lined up for you today, all kinds of updates. We have some good speakers. And to lead things off, we have a leadership update, and that's going to be by Mike Vanderhoff, who is the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Planning.
Thanks, Brenda, and thanks everybody who made it to the meeting today, particularly those who came over to IDOT to see our new auditorium. We just got it redone. It was rebuilt a few years ago, but we just had all the audiovisual stuff upgraded, so hopefully it's working. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. The main thing I'm going to talk about is an initiative, sort of a department-wide initiative that's kicking off right now, pretty much stemming from a report that was published by the Blue Ribbon Commission on Transportation Policy and Funding. And I don't know, do you have that PowerPoint loaded or is it on here? So I just go to the next slide. So I apologize for folks that have heard of this before because you've heard of it before, but we're trying to make sure that we're sharing it pretty widely because it's going to drive a number of initiatives and hopefully move the ball forward in a wide range of categories for the department. And there's actually a few things that that are in here that our freight plan, the way we've done investment decision-making over the past couple cycles are gonna feed into and inform. So basically, what this comes from is in 2022, the General Assembly created a Blue Ribbon Commission on transportation. It's transportation policy and infrastructure funding. It's got a little bit of a long name. We just call it the Blue Ribbon Commission. But they were charged with 11 duties: evaluate current funding, look at new and innovative funding options, evaluate governance systems in Illinois, look at current and future workforce needs, evaluate our data resources, expedite project delivery. That's a pretty big one, near and dear to everybody's heart. Look out to the future. Consider how to improve investment impacts and outcomes. Improvements to the performance-based programming system. Look at multimodal and look at other states, basically other best practices. So that thing kicked off in 2023, early 2023, and we were trying to help stand it up out of the Bureau of Planning until they were able to get a consultant on board, which occurred in 2024, and kind of got underway with their own team, providing logistics and technical support. Interestingly, we had long-range transportation plan underway at the same time, which is a forward-looking document that had kind of similar objectives. So while the BRC, Blue Ribbon Commission, was getting stood up, we were kind of preparing existing conditions memos in these different areas that they had to look at to try to do some baselining for the commission. And then once their technical support got underway, they started reaching out internally within IDOT and externally. And I know there's a number of people on the line from IDOT that were involved, and I'm also certain that a number of folks were included in some of the interviews they did with stakeholders, industry, things like that, and also counties and MPOs and municipalities. So they gathered a lot of data, and like plans go, they set some objectives and started narrowing down, what might we want to accomplish and what are we going to do to get there. And so the Blue Ribbon Commission report is organized into 5 core objectives: accelerate project delivery, expand workforce capacity, maximize the value of investments, drive sustainable outcomes, and secure adequate funding sources. So under those banners, there's 30 some odd particular strategies, and there's upwards of 115 actions that are going to be considered by the department for implementing the goals and objectives set out by the Blue Ribbon Commission. We're calling this our strategic blueprint. It's kicking off pretty much right now, where these teams have been organized of interdisciplinary internal staff. Project managers have been assigned, champions with leadership have been assigned, and we've sorted up all the actions that came out of this BRC report and assigned these to different groups that are going to start working on them now, but definitely in earnest next week at a kickoff up in Chicago. But one of the things I wanted to sort of make sure folks are aware from the ISFAC is that, like, when you look under some of the project delivery goals, maximize the value of investments for sure. When we developed the competitive freight program in 2018, we basically laid out the goals in the freight plan, developed criteria that we would use to meet those goals. We opened it up externally and internally, told everybody how we were going to score it. We were going to use all this primarily freight related data, but there's also ADT and safety and stuff like that in there. And we put out a call for projects. We did a very transparent evaluation. We presented it back to the ISFAC and basically to show that we went and did what we said we were going to do. This was a data-driven process. This wasn't a negotiated thing. Projects stood on their own merits and they were ranked based on that. And we programmed $450 million worth of, or $250 million in that round. We're up to 450 now, worth of highway projects that made it through the approval process, highway, rail, and marine projects that made it through the approval process with pretty much no questions, and we've been delivering those projects in that manner since 2018. So when we talk about maximizing the value investments, when you see strengthening metrics based on investment goals, stuff like that, that's the kind of thing we're talking about, is how is IDOT making investment decisions right now, and how can we continue to build on that, make it more sophisticated, so that we're pretty much trying to utilize all our funding in the best way we can for whatever goal we're trying to meet, whether it be asset management or freight or carbon reduction. So this group was actually involved in some really considerable steps that IDOT started taking in that direction many years ago, and we're going to continue to, as we'll hear a little bit more about later. So if anybody hasn't seen the Blue Ribbon Commission report, it's only a couple hundred pages. It's a fast read. It really is kind of a fast read. So I would encourage you, the front end of the report has a lot of good data and about the transportation system, what's going on with workforce, what's going on with revenue, things like that. And then it gets into the recommendations that came out of the BRC. And we're basically using that as our strategic plan moving forward. And I would hope and expect that people are going to be continuing to hear about how that's going, what concrete or material things are coming out of it, what steps are the department going to be taking moving forward to basically make process improvements, policy improvements, things like that. So that's the primary leadership update that I've got right now. There's lots of other kind of normal stuff going on, and with the federal level, we're not quite sure what's going on with the new authorization coming out of the federal government. We're kind of hearing different angles on that right now, so there's really nothing to report there. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I've got. And I guess, does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you all coming today, and feel free to reach out if anybody's got. Scott, do you have something, sir?
Yeah, I was reviewing that BRC this morning in anticipation of this call. I noted that there's very little mention of farms or corn, soy, agriculture. 59% or 60% of the land area of the state is covered in corn and soybeans. And how does the efforts now seek to bridge that gap from the one mention of grains being a primary commodity besides coal in moving on the waterways? It seemed to miss the agricultural component of transportation.
Yeah, no, I think that probably had more to do with sort of the context of that particular effort. Like when we get into freight planning specifically, we're going to be talking about agriculture prominently. We know that that's pretty much from a dollar value, one of the biggest commodity going through the state, marine system via highway, rail, et cetera. So I'd say that you're going to see that focused on more heavily in our freight planning work and in some of our marine transportation work. But I just think the context of the Blue Ribbon Commission report would have had trouble getting to that sort of granularity in any one mode, so they talk about transit, but they don't get too deep in transit or active trans or freight in particular. But I can tell you that the information we're collecting is being uploaded for use by the different committees. So that kind of information will be available to them when the work starts getting underway. Rural urban
Yes.
is another thing that will be looked at, which, isn't quite the same, but it's sort of a context thing when we start talking about agriculture.
Yeah, just historically, funding gets directed toward the populations and not necessarily by economic activity. And so, with population relatively diminishing in rural areas, there are concerns that the continued focus on rural infrastructure is a highlight. So just bring that to the top of the pile.
No, that's a good and fair point, and it's something that we talk about quite a bit in here, particularly with programming, revenue funding distribution.
Thank you for your input.
No, thank you for your comment. Does anybody have anything else? Well, I'll turn it over to Adam. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that. Appreciate the leadership update. So my name's Adam Gabney. I'm the Intermodal Planning Unit Chief here in the Bureau of Planning and our central office. I oversee things like our freight plan, Illinois State Freight Advisory Council, and a variety of other planning efforts. So today I'm going to be here talking about truck parking. So we've got a few extra folks here to kind of talk about some different dimensions of the truck parking space. So first, I'm going to talk about a discretionary grant. We applied for a discretionary grant, a discretionary build grant at the end of February, where we're looking at getting funds for Fort Massac and Salt Kettle rest areas in Illinois to expand truck parking and to increase capacity of the facilities at the rest areas. So that was submitted, and we hope to hear back maybe May, June timeframe to see if we did get awarded that. So that is a very cool thing we haven't really gone and done before. So we are hopeful for that. And potentially there will be more discretionary grants coming with the future infrastructure bill from the federal government. They said there's roughly about $200 million set aside, I believe, in, it's not build, which one is it? Infra, yeah. So it's going to be an infra. So we'll hope to go after one of those if we can. So next up, so we've got our next freight plan coming up. I'll talk about that in a little while. But so truck parking is going to be a major emphasis as part of our freight plan. So that's just something we will, as we have a truck parking kind of subcommittee, that'll be pretty extensively part of our freight plan engagement. So we'll get started on that here shortly. Next, we do have a statewide line item for truck parking. So we're looking at ways to spend those funds and get some new programs going. So that's something we will keep you guys all updated on and make sure that we're sharing that information as we start working on those. So one of the things that came up, we've worked with our District 2 office, and they've been looking at like a corridor study for truck parking, looking at large collections of distribution centers and seeing what that looks like for truck parking, specifically on a corridor, I believe it's on I-39. And then next, like I said, we have got our truck parking committee. We'll be getting that back together and talking about kind of our next steps and priorities here in the near future. But overall, that's kind of a big picture look at truck parking here in the Bureau of Planning. So next up, we have two more speakers. So we've got Scott Hall from the Bureau of Operations, and he is our roadside maintenance manager, and he oversees basically all of the rest areas here in Illinois. So he's going to come up and talk about rest areas and the future of those here at IDOT.
Can we ask a question on the truck parking?
Yeah, sure.
So, do you see port districts or port authorities being able to apply for funding for truck staging down the road?
We haven't really specifically looked at that. I don't see that to be an issue for that. So no, I don't see that to be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Adam said, my name's Scott Hall. I'm the roadside maintenance manager in operations. About 70% of my job is dealing with rest areas. Back in 2020, we did a rest area study. My predecessor did. We hired a consultant to look at every rest area we had, the age of it, the amount of truck parking, amount of available parking in general, facilities. What they determined was that most of our rest areas were failing. Truck parking was very inadequate. The amount of area was inadequate. The angles of parking were outdated. The ramps were the geometrics were not correct with today's current standards. So they developed a 10-year plan. So out of 53 rest areas, they had determined that 27 of them needed additional truck parking and could utilize it. And they determined this through a variety of matrix. One of them being was the size of the building and could they accommodate more truck parking. Other factors were what truck parking was available down, either upstream or downstream of the current facility. So of those 27 rest areas, took a little bit of time to get some funding for them. We have not up to this point until we applied for the discretionary grant. We have not utilized any federal funds for any of these projects, but starting in 2022, we started working on this 10-year plan. We're a little bit behind, but we're starting to get caught up a little bit more. Funding has been a little bit more fluid. So of these 27 areas, the first projects we started were our Funks Grove Rest area, which is up south of Bloomington on I-55 in McLean County. We started there with 19 truck parking stalls. We did a renovation up there, added some space, removed some trees and added some space. We ended up with adding 16 spaces, so a total of 35 truck spaces. Of those, 2 truck spaces were ADA compliant, so we were able to add that as well. Our next location shortly after was our Trail of Tears, which is down in Union County. Both northbound and southbound, we were able to add some available land and add some spaces. Northbound, we started with 20 spaces. We ended up with 33, so we added 13 with 2 ADA stalls. And our southbound location, we added 22 stalls. Starting with 21, we ended up with 43. So we were able to increase those pretty dramatically. And on the southbound location, we also added 2 ADA stalls. Currently, we have 2 projects that are underway and currently under construction. Our rail splitter project, which is just north of town here in Springfield, in Sangamon County. We started with 6 truck spaces on both of those locations. We're increasing that to 22 for both locations. So adding a total of 16 both ways, with 1 ADA stall in each one. And our Coalfield location, which is located down in Montgomery County, down by Wagner, Illinois. We started there with 28 northbound and 25 southbound. We are increasing that by 40 and 45 stalls on both locations. So there was a great need for that down there. We had a bunch of available land. We do have a couple of projects that are in a design phase right now and have not been out to bid. Our Fort Massac, as Adam said, we applied for a discretionary grant, and our Salt Kettle location. Both of those will add, Fort Massac will add 48 stalls, and Salt Kettle will add 20 stalls at that location. And at Salt Kettle, we have the ability to, in the future, expand that another 77 stalls. We've got some available land there, but because the building is not sized enough to put in that many truck spaces, we'll have to renovate the building at the same time. So these are all being done by state funds right now. Like I said, Adam said, we're applying for some discretionary grants. If we can get those and continue those, then it'll bump our timeline up considerably. So, but overall, in all the projects we've done so far in the last 4 or 5 years, we've added about 250 spaces, or have plans to add about 250 spaces. So, but that's where the rest areas are at right now. So, does anybody have any questions? We've either added or had plans to add 250. So, yeah, the Fort Massac and Salt Kettle, and both of those are on track. If we do not get our discretionary grant, we will proceed with state funds on those. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Scott. All right, next up, we have Peter Stracino from our Bureau of Operations, and he's going to go over our truck parking information management system updates.
Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Pete Stracino. I am the Intelligent Transportation Systems Unit Manager. I work out of the Bureau of Operations down here, but my office is up in Schaumburg, Illinois. So I'm working on what they call TPIMS, which is Truck Parking Information Management. Let's see. Looks. Nope. Yeah. We have a couple of websites. One is truckparking.travelmidwest.com, which is currently deployed. It has 4 active rest areas that have cameras that are counting the spaces that are available for truck parking. As you can see, there's 4 icons there with numbers on it. Those are displaying what the number of available spaces are. If you continue on, if you click on one of the icons, you can see an image of the rest area where the trucks are parked. You can make your own visual determination. Hey, is there going to be space there for time when I get there? The truckers can go to this mobile-friendly website, truckparking.travelmidwest.com. We also have another website called travelmidwest.com. Travel Midwest is a traveler information website. On there are icons that are like blue with a P sign on them. Actually, they could be blue, red, yellow, or have a slight green color on them. It would give the indication of what's if there are spaces available. It's blue. Red means it's full. Yellow would be that the probability of a parking space being available is low. Typically, it's like maybe only 2 or 3 spots available. And then if it's closed, then it will display the kind of a greenish color. We may be changing that color later because sometimes I would look at that and say green means, you know, hey, we go to that spot. There should be something open. Although you can also click on those icons and get a picture of what the rest area looks like and tells you what's available and what milepost it's at, whatnot, if you're not sure exactly where it's at. We are currently also sending the information or provide the information to Trucks Park Here, which is the app that some of the truckers can access. If you go there, there's a screen there that lists all the different states. And then I have highlight there, Illinois available now. And you click on that, it will take you to the truckparkingtravelmidwest.com website, and you can get your information from there. We are working currently, hoping in the near future to have 7 more rest areas up and running. These rest areas are Pride of the Prairie, both eastbound and westbound on I-72, the Green Creek northbound and southbound on I-57, the National Trail eastbound and westbound on I-70, and then also the Cumberland Road rest area, which is westbound I-70. Those I'm hoping to have those open probably by hopefully Memorial Day, and those 7 rest areas will add another 177 spaces in which we can provide information to the truckers. Truckers can go and pull up the website on their mobile device, or they can call their office and have them look it up for them if they're driving and can't access the devices. So that's what we're working on, and we currently are in design for more rest areas up in the District 1, 2, and 3 area, which is the northern Illinois, and then we'll eventually work on getting down more of the southern location. So we're working along with Scott Hall here, who's advising us which ones are going to be under construction and whatever, so we're not tripping over each other, or they're not going in and ripping up our equipment. But most of our stuff is going to be outside of the actual pavement area anyways. So are there any questions? Okay, see none?
I can hear. Yeah, Ann Schneider had a question. She says, will the truck parking committee take a look at resistance by local jurisdictions to truck parking due to negative impacts on development opportunities and minimal revenues, property taxes? Some municipalities, counties are looking at different options to generate revenue. Most are resistant to truck parking developments. That might be a question for Adam rather than.
All right. Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. We haven't talked about looking at that. That's not to say that we can't start looking at that. It may be, that might be something we can put on our agenda to start looking at. I know a lot of our rest areas, right, are our own state-owned right-of-way that we're working on. So I don't know if that really works in that as well. But we can definitely start looking at that and take a thought. Mike? Yep, yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't mind to tack onto that just a little bit. Thanks for the question. It's NIMBY's a big deal. So actually, I think we may try to spin that around a little bit. There's been increasing discussion in some of the groups that we participate in on trying to approach this proactively and work with local agencies to build into permitting processes consideration of truck parking and that kind of thing. So we're actually putting into the next, it's not necessarily going to be a truck parking committee thing, but it could be at some point. But we're scoping into the next freight plan, reaching out to some counties and munis to talk about the issue of land use, the truck parking issue, and whether or not there's any appetite for doing some kind of partnership work where local governments would actually, like a new developer comes in, DOTs are pretty much geared towards, well, it's going to have this kind of impact on traffic. You're going to have to put a stoplight in, a turn lane, that kind of thing. We're kind of going to start looking into whether or not there might be opportunities there to have some truck parking in consideration included in that. So not quite the answer to your question, but we may try to flip that around a little bit and start some conversations about dealing with it at the permitting stage. I hope that was okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have one from Doug Bradle. He says that it's great that they're adding 250 truck parking stalls. And he wants to know, what does that do to demand and how many more could be used? I'm not sure if that's Pete,
I can-
Scott.
I say I can probably take that one to some degree, but that's a start, right? 250 is a start. We need a lot more. I don't know how much that is really going to affect demand because most of our capacity is over 100% at most of our rest areas. So we can, we hope that it's going to help, but I don't expect it to really change the demand.
Yeah, this is Matt Hart, Illinois Trucking Association. There is currently one truck parking spot for every 11 trucks in America. So this won't make a dent. It'll help, but it won't make a dent.
Yep. Okay. All right, and then I think our next question is for Peter, and that's from Tom Murtha. Has IDOT gotten any feedback on drivers regarding the online data?
We've been fortunate that we attend the Midwest Trucker and Trailer Show, and there we have gotten some response back from the various truckers that stop by. We have people there that help them set up their phones to go to the mobile websites so that they can find the information that they're looking for. We also kind of walk them through it while they've got their phones in hand to show them all the information that they can obtain while they're online, and then how to see that. So I think a lot of them are for it. Getting actual responses, complaints, I haven't heard any necessary complaints. They can always send an email to the travel webmaster at travelmidwest.com. So that's
Okay, well, thanks. I'm going to tack onto that one just a little bit. Has Illinois thought about the display signs that show how many available parking spots and thought about implementing those?
we have thought about it. We were trying to keep this on a kind of low level deal. There is some talk about trying to do some research to see where those signs would be placed. I know I've experienced it when I drive through Indiana, when you say, okay, 60 miles ahead, I know there's 5 spaces available. And you get up there and you look and you're like, I think I only see 2 now. But, you know, that's the gamble that I guess as you're driving along the road and you see the sign, it says that's how many is available. And you hope that there's that many at least available at that time. On the website, we do provide some analytics showing the probability of a space being available at certain times of the day. If they want to say, okay, I see that there's 5 available now, and then if I get there at 6, what's the chance that there's going to be something there? There's a graph. I could go online, but I'm not going to mess with the computer here. So, but if you do go online, you can click on those icons and see, and it'll display the number of different graphs for the truckers to look at and help make knowledgeable decisions on whether they think they can park in 60 miles or if they're going to have to stop sooner or if they can keep going. So.
All right, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Adam, Scott. I guess Scott already left. And Pete, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone with the really good questions. Okay, and our next speaker is going to be LD White from the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, and he is going to talk about the Illinois Mobility Assessment Tool.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Are you going to share the slides or do I need to start? Perfect.
Yeah, just tell me when you're ready for me to go to the next screen.
Awesome.
And
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'll switch it for you.
Thank you, everybody. As she mentioned, my name's LD White, and I'm with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. And you might be wondering why is this guy from Texas on your freight advisory meeting? We've been working with Bill Morgan there at IDOT for a couple of years now and developing a mobility assessment tool to be able to get congestion and roadway performance data in the hands of decision makers and people who need it. We've been working on it for about 3 years now, and it's really gotten to the stage and mature stage of having enough years of the data to really be useful in some other applications other than just being active. You can go to the next slide, please. So what this tool is, this tool is it's an online publicly available tool that anybody that has the link to this can access it. It is not behind a paywall. It is not behind any kind of subscription service. It's available to anybody, whether it be from industry to local governments to MPOs, IDOT, anybody that needs access to it can actually use it. So what it is, a planning tool for analyzing and monitoring congestion and other roadway performance metrics so that you can get a better idea of what's happening on your roadways, not just for all of the vehicles that are traveling the roadways, but then trucks only. And that's why it's important in this aspect that here today, because we have features to it that are allowing you to look at how are trucks moving throughout the state. And with that goal of getting all of this data into the people the hands who need it, without having to have special GIS skills or without having to have anything that really special skills that aren't necessary in today's day and time. When we can have these web-based tools that can get that information out. Next slide, please. So here we're going through a little bit to give you kind of an idea of what does this thing actually cover. So we cover in this tool about almost every roadway that's in functional class 6 and above in the state of Illinois. So that map on the left is actually taken just a few days ago of the 2024 data that we have in the tool. Every roadway that you see on that map has some sort of roadway performance or congestion data on it. It's very comprehensive, and it's all tied to IRIS, Illinois Roadway Information System. The big reason we do that is so that now everyone is speaking the same language. Whether you're from IDOT or an MPO or even an industry and looking at this, you are talking from the same roadway network that everyone else is. It creates that common language, that common data set, that common piece, where that if you say that we're experiencing this on a certain roadway based on this tool, IDOT seeing the same thing. Everyone is talking from the same playbook. It includes things, since it's coming from IRIS and the way that we do it, it actually includes the traffic volume. So you get to see the final authoritative traffic volume, speed profiles, hours of delay. We have metrics for congestion costs. So how much is the cost due to that congestion, both from the vehicle operation and in terms of people. Wasted fuel, which is becoming more and more of a key as we deal with more of this congestion and prices of fuel and things going up. And reliability, a form of reliability in the planning time index. So how reliable is your road system? And then a travel time index that just kind of gives you an idea of how you would have to plan around a certain trip due to that congestion. So these are all meant to give you a holistic view of the roadway network. And by having all vehicles and trucks at the same, you get not just what your trucks are doing, but then how those trucks are impacting the overall roadways. As at the end of the day, trucks are traveling on the same roads as all of the vehicles. So it's important to have that aspect of both of those two combined together. Next slide, please. So the idea behind this is we have that statewide data set, that roadway network that we showed you a few minutes ago in that other slide. The idea is to have one data set that kind of rules them all, and then have different modules that help you to quickly get to the pieces that you need to get to solve and to answer the questions that you need to answer. And we're going to go through a couple of these in a little bit more detail, but just kind of in a broad overview, this thing we call the roads module, that's just where you have access to all of the roadway network. It's broken down by different geographies to get you easier access to the data, because I personally, in my group, my visual analytics program we have here, I have a 5 clicks or less rule. I want you to be able to get to an answer very quickly. You may have to refine your answer, but at least you get to it. So we have all of the roads module that gets you to those aspects fairly quickly. We have a top 100 congested roadways where we take and we make, instead of the individual IRIS segments, we make longer segments. We rank those on a delay per mile basis so you can find your bottlenecks easier. We have what we call a fix-it module that's kind of embedded in some of the other ones that allow you to do sketch planning. An MPO module that gets you to more MPO features, and then some summary dashboards that are just a high level, more almost administrative type information, just to get you a quick answer of what a region or a district may be looking at. Next slide, please. So the first piece I wanted to talk about was the top 100 most congested roadways. Inside this, we use this module to monitor the congestion on some of the largest, most traveled roadways across the state. This is going to allow you to identify your key and your most congested corridors. We have it inside this dashboard where you're able to select between all vehicle and then truck only. So it's easy to get to just your truck corridors, which generally they're not going to be drastically different. They may change in ranking some, but the top 100 are generally going to be the same. It's just going to have a different ranking between all vehicles and trucks most of the time. Let's see. The one thing that we did do with this that's kind of visible on this is we do have a version that includes Chicago and a version that does not include Chicago. That way you get a more of a regional perspective, not just it's overwhelmed by Chicago, but everybody gets a little bit of representation to be able to find these key corridors so that they can use them for the purposes that they need. Inside this, we have various performance measures. We have the delay, person hours of delay, delay per mile, truck delay in terms of vehicle delay. the cost of congestion, wasted fuel. We have peak period measures so that you can look at what it is during the peak period travel times versus non-peak. Then we also have different types of profiles. So speed profiles, so you can see what, and congestion profiles, so you can see what time of day is worse on some of these segments than others. And then also be able to look at congestion scans, so you can say which day type is worse than others, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So some of the potential users for this, obviously planners and operators, decision makers, MPOs have a lot of good use in this. Next slide, please, and I'll go through some of the applications of this. So obviously the biggest one is being able to identify these bottlenecks quickly and easily. The data is already formed, so it's merely by clicking through buttons that you can get to these. A lot of these are used in supporting different types of transportation plans, especially and we have similar tools than all of these modules and all of this tool. We have similar tools in Texas and in Maryland that we both build, and they're used a lot in freight plans, resiliency plans, long range plans, anything that you can use to be able to, where you need to identify those bottlenecks. And then be able to look at summaries, because as you can see on the left-hand side of that screenshot, you can see the different summaries of these that can go into doing trends analyses and what things are looking like, just to give you that picture in your plans of here's what is happening with our congestion and how the trucks are performing. It's also important in terms of project development. So when DOTs, especially Texas and Maryland, they both use this when they're looking at the potential projects that they may be going to fund. Is it on one of these key corridors? If it's on one of these key corridors, it may get a little bit of a bit ranking or a boost as to how that could impact the performance of the road system. Trends analyses, because they have multiple years now, all the way up through 2020 through 2024. Now you can start to look to see how are these corridors performing over the years. Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? And then there's always the big piece in the performance monitoring that states and MPOs are required to do, both at the state and federal level. This gives you that opportunity to be able to do this fairly quickly. Next slide, please. And so this is just kind of a screenshot. I had this in here of what the actual dashboard itself looks like. And so through this was just kind of one of the quick, applications that I did off the cuff, that just identify the top 5 ranking truck corridors in terms of delay per mile. It's automatically there. You load up the site and it's automatically there. There's not much you have to do. And so having that information easy at hand that you can work into your plans and be able to see this and use as a communication piece. This module and this dashboard is designed to also be a communication piece that's refined, a little bit more visually appealing, and you can use that then just as a link itself to be able to share with others. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I kind of showed the idea of the profiles and being able to look at the time of day and when the truck delay is the worst, and then the congestion scans not only be able to look at time of day as to when they're the worst, but then day of the week. So you get that overall picture of when am I experiencing this delay. Next slide, please. So the next piece is the roads module. So and I'm going to run through these really quickly, and hopefully I get to the end because I want to save time for questions when we get to the end. And at the end, I have a little bit more refined, of some examples of what we've used this for in the past. But this roads module, this is more for looking at the planning purposes where you can go in and create your own corridors. It is not, there is nothing predefined in it. The other has the segments predefined. These are the individual IRIS segments themselves. So it provides you with the utmost flexibility in being able to create corridors as you go along for your specific area as you want to analyze them. It has many of the same measures that are included in the top 100 in terms of delay, the planning time index that we use for a form of reliability, wasted and consumed fuel, the congestion costs, and again, this is going to be a lot more likely to be used for planners and local governments and in different planning situations. But it is a very user friendly for the sense of anybody that wants to go in and create summaries of different areas and different parts of the roadway network to see how that is performing year over year. Next slide, please. Okay, so use cases on this for this piece. This piece is going to be a little bit more flexible in how you can use it and what you choose to use it for. Obviously, the state and federal performance requirements, this can play a role in those, and be able to get you that information quickly, and be able to assemble that in a consistent way across the years and build you consistency as you're building those. Again, same thing, support for the transportation plans. It's used quite frequently in freight plans. We're actually working through Maryland at the moment and how they're using their version of this. We're working with them in building different data sets and data sources for their freight plan. So it's been used in Texas freight plans, resiliency plans, giving you that idea of what regions and what areas and what different parts of the roadway network may can be affected by different events. And then in long range transportation plans just as well. Now this because it has much more flexibility to it, also introduces things like corridor planning and regional planning into it. Corridor planning now, because you can see the other roadways that are happening around it, you can get a better sense of creating any kind of corridor the way that you would like, and see how things are going over the years, and be able to adjust those plans and update those with just this as being a key data source. It also supports project development, not only just through the identification of where projects can help, but we've also used similar tools in Texas for evaluating projects. So once you have enough data, which we're starting to develop enough now, you can look at what was congestion, what was the roadway performance like before you had the project, and then after. So you start to get an easy way to get a sense of what that impact of that project was. And then obviously trends analyses, because of the 5 years, you can look at what your region is doing, or what your different parts of your networks are doing over the years. Next slide, please. So this is one of the examples that is pretty common in the freight world that we've done in both Texas and in Maryland. So you want to look at, and I picked Chicago just to use this as an example. So looking at your freight network, what is happening with our freight network, and what is it doing? How is it performing? What is the commodity? You've got the commodity information. You kind of generally know what's flowing on your networks. But what are their bottlenecks where are they getting stopped? Where are they having their choke points? How much delay is existing on these different parts of the freight network? Being able to monitor that as a total in terms of plans and different types, freight plans and resiliency plans is a big piece in having that consistent data set that's also built also across the years as being consistent. Because one of the things across those is having consistent data sources. Next slide, please. One of the other things is this custom corridor. So I mentioned the custom corridor creation. So I went in and found one that was kind of lit up red, and you're able to use kind of like you do on, if you want to use a Google Maps kind of as an example, you put in I want to start here and go there. We have the same kind of philosophy inside this tool, where you can select select a corridor where you want to start, put the end, and the tool automatically aggregates this data so that you don't have to do anything, and you get more of that idea of, okay, now across the corridor that I'm interested in, what is my truck delay? What is my excess fuel? What does my congestion cost look like across this piece? Ultimate flexibility to be able to create it however you want on the fly, whichever segments you would like to include in your corridors. Next slide, please. So one of the latest things that we've added in that's actually integrated, it was originally a module itself, and now it's kind of integrated inside of our roads and MPO modules, is actually what we call the Fix-It module. So what that is that's a tool for evaluating these high-level impacts on certain projects, on certain parts of the roadway performance, on delay and on some of the wasted fuel, and a couple of other parameters we have, and the congestion costs, I believe, is the third. So what it allows you to do is create that custom corridor that I was just showing you a minute ago, and there's a button inside there. You can click on it, and it will launch this screen, and you can go in and add a growth factor, and then added what we call a treatment type, which is a type of project, and see what is the general impact of that project going to be. Gives you a high level planning 20,000 foot view as to what that project may have. Does it even have congestion? Is it going to have any mobility relief? Is it not? It's amazing the things that we've found where places have used this and gone, okay, this actually doesn't have the impact we thought. It's very easy to use. It requires actually outside of the ILMAT tool itself, it requires a total of 3 inputs. So it's very simple, very easy to get to, just to get you to that base kind of impact level. Next slide, please. So what would you use this for? So this is really important in what if scenarios. Just looking at it, different, everybody has a different strategy as to what they're going to do with their roadways. And, Texas is an interesting state. They like to pour concrete. They pour lots of concrete. So they go, a lot of the time we're using this, it's okay, if we add a lane to a certain roadway, what's that impact going to be? And how's it going to change things if we add 1 lane, 2 lanes, 3 lanes? Or there's other things, adding managed lanes, variable speed limits, and we're continuing to work out those treatment types to see what other ones we can add in to continue to build that out to get those impacts. One of the places that this is actually quite useful is when you have a set list of projects that you're trying to figure out which would you do in your area, or which one should we suggest. This gives you a filtering mechanism that may not have had before. Some of even the MPOs here in Texas use something very similar to be able to decide, okay, the public suggests all these projects, or an organization suggests 10 projects. Which one of these are actually going to have mobility impacts and which ones are not? This gives you that way of, instead of running every project through a project scoring cycle, this gives you a way to be able to filter those down to only do those key ones that are going to hit the targets and hit the goals that you want to hit. Next slide, please. Okay, so really quick, these next couple of slides, I'm going to go really fast. These are just summary dashboards. We have a summary dashboard that's statewide and by district within Illinois, so that you can look at all vehicles and truck only to give you a high level look at what's happening and what's changing. And there's no drill down, there's no actual roads themselves, they're just higher level looks. Sometimes this is the easiest way to get to some of that information, and sometimes if you want to communicate that to others, it's the easiest place to send, and because there's no really clicks required. And the one thing that it does kind of lead you down a story of identifying things. So if you're all vehicles, if you want to try to start off with your all vehicles and you're trying to figure out what is going on, you can then look at trucks only, all vehicles versus trucks, and it has a different dashboard slide where then you can see, are the trucks changing at a different rate that some of the all vehicles are changed. And then looking at it by functional class to see if there's something else going on in there. Next slide, please. Now, the last one I wanted to talk about real quick in terms of the modules is the MPO module, and this is pretty specific. Just I only wanted to mention in case we had some of our MPO partners on the call. This one's very similar to the roads module. Really, the only difference is that it's centered around MPOs. And they have the ability to submit some segmentation for their congestion management process that we can store, and then it's easily reloaded so that they don't have to continue to recalculate these numbers time after time. Next slide, please. So some of the other use cases beyond what I just kind of mentioned. So right now, I know that the original intent, and that when Bill and I started this, was for this to be a part of IDOT's data-driven decision tool, to provide a data input to that. And it's a key piece, it's starting to become a key piece into that. And then obviously Adam and I talked that it fits into freight plans. Being able to identify those corridors fairly easy, and having that piece that's that's consistently done and is across the board is a big piece inside of any freight plan. And so, you know, in IDOT, it's being used for their freight, it's going to be used there. It's used in Maryland's freight plan, and then in Texas as well. And then any kind of grant programs, it's always a useful piece to have there to be available for that. One other mention, it's something I wanted to mention about it. It's not ILMAT itself, but it's a sister tool. So in terms of just kind of potential use cases, as I said, Maryland DOT has a tool very similar. When the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed, it became that tool became a big piece around this. And it really kind of showed us that we have something here that can be used for any kind of long-term traffic disruption analysis as well. It's not just, since this is planning level, you can use it to get an idea of some things. Okay, if I have something happen on a specific corridor and the surrounding corridors are already congested and having issues, we know we've got a bigger problem than just that disruption itself on the one corridor. And so we were able to use that to be able to really look at what was happening immediately. We actually started on it the day of the collapse and looking at it and going and seeing what was happening and be able to guide them a little bit. It was used by Maryland DOT and then even by our partners of FHWA and FMSCA to get some high-level answers quickly, because it is able to get that. And then that idea behind Fix-It and the way that was used with being able to just change traffic volumes and not just necessarily adding projects, but being able to easily change traffic volumes and see what changes are, was able to get us a sense rather quickly of, as the traffic patterns change and as we got traffic counts around the state, we're able to see, okay, this is what you look like before, this is what you're going to look like a year from now, which they were able to then use that even into federal funding discussions. So these type of tools have a lot of broad applications once they get kind of ingrained and kind of are there. They come up with a lot of pieces. And then of course there's the mobility reporting. You know, in Texas we have it. It's state required that we monitor the top 100 congested roadways. So it's the sister tools of this one serve a big piece in that, and they do in both in Maryland and their state and federal reporting that they rely pretty heavily on those for both of those. So there's that avenue for that piece to be there as well. And I believe that is it.
Okay, thank you, LD. Very, very impressive tool and very useful. And I just am curious if anybody has any questions.
We've got a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
We've got one person asking, so are they able to look at months specifically, say September, October, across several years to showcase the congestion from agricultural harvests?
In the way that the tool exists right now, no. Can we? Yes, absolutely. And actually, I love that you asked that question, because my background is 25 years ago, I graduated with an agricultural engineering degree. So I have always been looking at how do we work. I always wanted to look at how we work those sorts of things in that seasonal aspect of that. That is something that we can definitely look into and see how we can incorporate those sorts of things into that. So that is not now, but possibly in the future.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a couple questions from Tom Murtha. Tom, do you want to come off mute and ask those, if that would be easier?
Sure. Let's see. Couple kind of technical questions. When I saw the congestion scan slides, I didn't see directionality. Do you get to specify the direction of travel when you're running these?
We are working. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, because directionality affects travel speed by time of day and day of week and so forth. So is that something that's out there now, or?
Not in this version. Right now, we're looking at both directions at the same time. They're calculated separately, but they're both included in the same measure at the moment. Directionality is something that we've discussed and looked at, making sure that getting that worked out where we can get those directionalities split so that they're actually split the right directions and not intermingled.
Okay, all right, yeah, that would make it a lot more useful, I think.
Yep.
And then when you showed the dashboards, the
Yes.
I didn't see the segment limit. If you're making improvements, that would also be something that would seem to be kind of obvious, that to be able to tell what part of the Kennedy Expressway you were talking
Yes.
about there. So
When you click on, if you click on one of those five, it will go to that piece that actually has more detail. That high level summary, we didn't have that, but we'll see about getting that in there. But it is listed the next level down once you dig into either a region or the total list that's in there. But that is a good point. We need to have that in there. Thank you, Tom. That we need to have that in there on that front page so it makes more sense.
yeah. All right, and then my last comment, question, kind of the big issue in Illinois is just being able to maintain our bridges and our pavements. That's what a lot of the capital programming is focused on. A lot of the congestion issues are really, kind of left for discretionary funding, unfortunately. But I have have other users of this kind of successfully integrated this into, kind of looking at it holistically with capital maintenance programming and planning, like for bridges, bridge condition, pavement condition, all that sort of stuff.
Right now, we have those. So that the list that we have of the types of projects in there, this is a partial list. The rest of them, we're working on getting those in, because those that you mentioned in that, since they're not directly mobility related, but they do affect things like your greenhouse gas, and it starts to build that out where you are having other impacts. So the honest answer right now is no, not that I'm aware of, but that's the stuff that we're working on to get into the next iteration of this fix-it piece. Those capital improvement projects they're not going to show up in your mobility necessarily, because most of the time, although bridge could,
Yeah,
bridge improvements could. But
I'm not thinking of the tool itself. I'm thinking of how the tool is used in the context of
yeah,
a bigger picture transportation planning and
what
programming.
so like Maryland, no, we don't have it in this, but I know that they do some, because we have ooh, goodness, twisting my tongue. IRI listed in the tool where you can see that inside the pieces itself. So they do include it in part of their stuff to be able to do some of that. It's not necessarily wrapped up into that fix-it piece, but I do know that they have it wrapped up into that in some way.
Okay.
So there is some, but I don't have direct knowledge of a ton of them.
All right. Thank you.
And I greatly appreciate the feedback. This tool will be as good as the feedback we can get. So thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. And we'll see. I'd love to visit with you more on some ways that we make it, especially that capital improvement side. What are some ideas we can do to make this more useful in that sense?
Okay, does anyone have any more questions? And of course, LD has his email address there, so if anybody can think of something later on, you can go ahead and jot down that email. And again, LD, that was very impressive. It's a very impressive tool, very useful, and thank you again for presenting for us. Thank you so much. Okay. Our next presenter is Chris Schmidt from here at the Bureau of Planning, and he is going to speak to us about the Resilience Improvement Plan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Schmidt. As Brenda said, Air Quality Manager at the Illinois Department of Transportation. I probably won't be on video just so I can save bandwidth here, but I wanted to make sure you got a name to the face. Thank you to Illinois Freight Advisory Committee for letting me present, Adam and Brenda for letting me talk on that subject. So next slide. So I'm here today to talk to you about our Resilience Improvement Plan. we're going to go over a few things kind of before we get to the nuts and bolts of the resilience improvement plan. Going to go over resiliency at IDOT. Another project that I worked on several years ago called the All Hazards Plan. We did an update to that. Then we're going to get in the nuts and bolts of the resilience improvement plan. I tend to give a short version of that, just call it the RIP. Obviously the acronym for Resilience Improvement Plan. RIP key findings, and then next steps. So dive right into it. Next slide. Okay, so what is a resilience improvement plan? Well, with the passage of IIJA back in 2021, 2022, there was a new formula funding category that was added to our general list of formula funding. It's a very, very long acronym, but promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation. Protect. I will not be saying that again. Nobody wants me to say that again. We're just going to call it Protect Formula Funding. So what does that mean specifically? So specifically for Illinois, it's a little bit over $256 million, which, well, I was looking that number up, looks like it's the same as the amount Illinois gets for highway freight. So familiar in dollar amounts there. That generally means that 80% of a project can be funded with that federal dollar. Why they say generally here is that if a state does have a approved resiliency improvement plan or a RIP, you can actually knock off another 7%. So now we're at 87% funded federally. And then if it's adopted, the RIP, the resilience improvement plan, is adopted by a long-range plan in a metropolitan planning area or the state long-range plan, you can add another 3%. So if you're a math whiz like I am, that's 90% federal funding that we'll be able to get for these projects. So what exactly is a Protect project eligibility thing? So what does all that mean? Anything that is going to help with resiliency as far as planning activity, actual resilience improvements to actual assets or roads, bridges that are in jeopardy or notorious for flooding or getting damaged due to different weather events, community resilience, evacuation route activities, and at-risk coastal infrastructure activities. And you might say, well, that doesn't really affect Illinois. Believe it or not, Lake Michigan does count. Our border with Lake Michigan does count as a coastal area. So those activities to harden that coastline is eligible under the at-risk coastal infrastructure section of this funding. So next slide, please. Okay, so I just said at the top that we did an update to the all hazards assessment, and then we also did a resilience improvement plan. So the all hazards, if you're not familiar, in 2017, we were the first state that I know of in the United States to put together an all hazards assessment, a vulnerability index score for every single asset in the state for both man-made and natural disaster. Now, we're not the first one to come up with one for natural disaster, but a combined for man-made, so, you know, IEDs, terrorism attacks, anything like that, you know, that would just natural, you know, a truck taking out a pylon of a bridge. You look at the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident, you know, vulnerabilities like that were assessed in the all hazards. So we did an update to that to look at new bridges, new infrastructure that's been built since 2017, all the different things that can change over that significant amount of time. Then we also produced a resilience improvement plan that was in line with what the federal government asked for in a resilience improvement plan from a state. And we'll kind of get into what exactly that means here in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So here are the two buckets for what an all hazards assessment and resiliency improvement plan sort of address. I'm not going to read all these through. Basic thing to understand here is all hazards kind of gave everybody a score, every bridge, every road segment a score, talked about how at risk they are. The resilience improvement plan sort of dives a little bit deeper, talking about sort of future design guidance, taking into account resilience and screening process, and then also sort of best practices of what's, you know, hand in hand with the future design guidance, sort of what can we do to harden an asset in the future to make it less susceptible to a climate-driven event, weather-driven event, and then some performance metrics to try to track all that stuff. So next slide. This was very timely that we took on this endeavor. Obviously, the funding being tied to it helps, you know, propel this conversation forward. But also in line with when we put this out for bid and got a consultant under contract, the Illinois Water Survey came out with their latest Bulletin 76, which is an updated projection for precipitation frequency in Illinois. Sorry, I can't believe I couldn't get that out. So this looks at a baseline of 1999 and future year is 2055. This kind of takes into account 7-year max temperature, days above 95 degrees, freeze-thaw cycle, extreme weather events, landslide, wildfire, drought, all your major things that you would think of, taking into account tornadoes, dust storms. Biggest thing on here is this updates sort of the 100, 500-year flood event for a particular type of asset and explains sort of where the projections are going to look like based on human activity. So next slide. So I guess what I'm saying here in this slide is that we were very timely that we got to use the best and most available information that came out in January of last year. We were really using a lot of old data, let's say 10 years ago. It's been updated quite a bit more based on this conversation of climate change, and that is the absolute latest and greatest. So the offices within IDOT hadn't even moved. We haven't even moved as a state to using those in practice for design standards, and now it's in this assessment. So it's actually a little bit ahead of its time. We're going to go into the information in the RIP guidance and what access means. So information about the different assets, guidance on how to harden those different assets, and then how to access the money, which is the big thing. So that $256 million, being able to add that extra 7% comes with an approved resilience improvement plan. Next slide. We also are aligning with the current long-range transportation plan, and we plan to be in line with the the new upcoming LRTP, which is coming out very shortly, so that will add that extra 3%. Just wanted to make reference to that. Next slide. Okay, so here's kind of the nuts and bolts risk-based vulnerability assessment. This is a very high level map here, but you can drill down into each one of the districts in each community. You can see the colors very faintly on this map. Unfortunately, I don't have a closer view map. We'll get into some asset-specific stuff a little bit later, but does the project contain any resilience risk? Yes, high. It's a roadway located in an area that increases runoff potential, an area with low slope, large slope contributions. The roadway is located in a 100-year floodplain. Those are the kind of the factors that went into whether or not an asset was considered vulnerable. We look at all of the different vulnerabilities. So obviously dust storms and tornadoes happen in the state of Illinois, but what are going to potentially knock out a roadway or a bridge in the greatest frequency? And sort of the two main buckets that we fell into were landslide and flooding. So next slide. Doesn't mean we didn't analyze all of those other threats. It's just that those are the most common. Those seem to have the most maintenance and long-term effects. There is always going to be a tornado that's going to come through the state. Does it knock out a bridge every time there's a tornado? I mean, we don't see that. So it's more of a one-off situation. Now, I will say that PROTECT funding is still available for a bridge that maybe is damaged through a tornado, but it's not something that we really drilled down in this study specifically. We had a number of committees that met, internal to IDOT, external to IDOT, asking sort of best practices that they've seen as far as road, bridge, culvert, pump station, bridge and facility maintenance. We asked them to sort of give an idea of what we're currently doing and what would be an idea for the future. What are good practices that they've seen that have worked? This includes enhancing green infrastructure usage for drainage, eco-friendly, things of that nature. And we put those all in at the end of the document, there's a laundry list of mitigation practices that we hope that the department will deploy in the different, either the maintenance operations or when new construction occurs. And any of those activities are eligible under PROTECT. So you're going to continue to pave the same road. Like you're not going to not pave 55, but if it's an area on 55 that's continually susceptible to flooding, new mitigation techniques that are outlined in the back of our plan here are eligible for PROTECT above and beyond that normal paving job that you were planning on doing. Next slide. Kind of just talked about this. So this is an example of the different strategies that we have in the back of our RIP. We narrowed that down. This was a much greater list. I don't want you to think that this is all that we looked at. We wanted to make it down to a list that is actual things that we can see IDOT doing in the future. Yeah, does an animal bridge across 55, was that looked at? Yes. Is that something we're going to be doing tomorrow? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out turn there. Next slide, please. This just is another very complicated slide here, kind of going into exactly how we came up with our final product and how we plan to have this implemented. I think it's probably good to note here that there's a lot of different ways you can go with a resilience improvement plan based on how FHWA made the ask for states to develop one. We really, as a state, focus on how we're going to access those PROTECT funds and how we're going to articulate to FHWA that we feel that this project is PROTECT eligible because of the different components that we've sort of teased out as being needed to harden this asset to make sure that we're not losing any kind of time for freight, let's say, the motoring public, traveling public. That's sort of what we focused a large part of our time on, mainly because we had already done the all hazard study and we already had that vulnerability index for all the assets that just really needed to be updated. There was a lot of states that had to produce that larger vulnerability index for all their assets, and we've kind of already done that exercise back in 2017. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the implementation part of the RIP. So a tool was created online that we'll be giving access to, and we've already given access to our programming department. They'll be able to zoom in on a particular asset, lasso road segment or a bridge or a series of culverts on a roadway, and be able to run its overall vulnerability and come up with solutions for it, but also to determine whether or not it's PROTECT eligible so they can get that extra dollars to harden the asset. Next slide. Just kind of a look at what this tool looks like online. This is the form that they'll fill out. Very easy. We try to make it as easy as possible so that last thing we want to do is to add more work to an area of IDOT. I like to think of us as sort of a service, the Bureau of Planning and our customer. We want to make sure that it's as easy and beneficial to their daily life. We don't want it to be a very burdensome, complicated process. So it really got distilled down to sort of these yes/no questions. Then the system sort of prints out or pumps out the explanation that's in FHWA speak that allows FHWA to say, yep, let's go ahead and use PROTECT funds on this particular asset and project. Next slide. Just more getting into the questions that are asked. Next slide. Okay. This is more of the kind of the key elements of PROTECT. This is a sample page from the plan, which will be available very soon. We're about ready to send it to the Federal Highway Administration to get their approval. Shout out to the Chicago MPO. CMAP just received a letter from FHWA approving their RIP, and IDOT was involved in the outreach portion of that. They did a really great job. A lot of what you'll see in our RIP aligns with what the findings were for the Chicagoland area. Obviously, this is a statewide plan as opposed to just the city of Chicago. I think one of the benefits to a statewide plan is I don't want to say it's completely agnostic when it comes to amount of roadway users, but assets that are failing in the state are going to get a high rating, whether there's a lot of people driving on it or not. We don't want to see our roadways damaged. So, you don't have to worry about Cass County not getting a high vulnerability score because there isn't the population density as, say, Cook County. But it feels to me is that the numbers that we got out of this exercise showed that there are vulnerabilities downstate that are not in populated areas. We still need to focus on those, and this funding, I think, speaks to that. And I think that's important. Next slide. I think we mentioned this at the end of the kind of introduction. There'll be a list of projects at the end. We asked all the districts to provide projects they thought were eligible for PROTECT funding, all 9 districts. So again, not central to Chicago, but all downstate projects. At least one project was evaluated for each district. A lot of that was based on response from the districts. Some were a little more eager than others. Believe it or not, the ones that are bordering the Mississippi River were very anxious to get us a list of projects, and rightfully so. So there'll be a priority list of projects that it's my hope and understanding at the end of the day, when Federal Highway says, yes, this is an approved RIP, automatically the projects that are listed here in this section will be eligible for PROTECT funding, and we can move forward with programming that $256 million or what we have left of it, which is a pretty good share for those projects. There is a discretionary portion of PROTECT. We haven't seen a call for projects from that for a while. I think it was about like 8.6 million that went to a project from the Illinois Department of Transportation for 290 due to some flooding. So that was a nice thing. That's outside of this formula funding. And then the MPO in Champaign received like 390,000 to do their own RIP. And I'm doing that from memory, so those numbers might be a bit different. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about what an overall risk score looks like. This is a visual breakdown of that. Good news, there's not really crazy high risk, high criticality assets in the state of Illinois. There's plenty that are maybe high risk or high vulnerable, but they're not in the same bucket. That's not the lion's share of our road network or our bridge structure. You can see here that in most cases, the very high section of our both bridges and roadways for landslide or flooding is under 1%. The mark that you want to look at is that black section, which is the high risk. Almost any project that or any asset that falls into that is probably going to be eligible when it comes time for construction or a hardening application to be eligible for PROTECT funding based on the analysis that we did. Next slide. This is hard to read, obviously. We can focus in on a particular area. We have this available in GIS, so if you're interested in this, once it comes out, be happy to provide the information on where to find this. This gives you a drill down all the way to, the mile marker of an asset and whether or not it's of high risk for either flooding or for the landslides. The dots here, I believe, are going to be the structures, and the left side, the more line segments are the other roadways. So this is what that kind of looks like when it's all finished. Next slide. And this is landslides. Similar kind of readout here. Roadway on the left, bridge network on the right. But you didn't know there were that many bridges and culverts in Illinois, did you? Next slide, please. Okay, so we're towards the end here. I think fall we might be moving that up to summer to have the resiliency tool released and available. We're going to have the final RIP to FHWA very, very soon. I think in the next couple of days, probably. And the report's complete, all the other supporting documents, and the resiliency tool will be used in-house primarily. We have toyed with the idea of locals being able to use it. It does have that network on it. I think we will probably look into folks that are eager to use that and see the interest as the tool gets rolled out. Next slide. Final kind of few slides here. This is the refinement of the resiliency screening tool. The previous slide where we showed a printout from that has been refined here. You can see on the right, this is the report that'll be printed out and will be given to FHWA. It's pretty blank right there because it's not a completed project, but that's sort of the form that you'll get a PDF of that we will add to an email to FHWA and say, hey, this project reached this threshold in the screening tool, therefore we feel it's FHWA, it's eligible for the PROTECT funding. Of course, if you're following along and I haven't made this too confusing for you, there'll still be a list at the end of the RIP that are all eligible. This would be primarily used for future projects. And I say that because it's a fairly bipartisan program. We've seen definitely some iterations of the new transportation bill that sees PROTECT funding continue through 2031. So I don't see this going anywhere because obviously there's need in every state and it's formula funding. So it's not like a community is not receiving this funding based on ideology or something like that. And so having this tool in place is something that other states maybe have not thought about, but we will have in place in the state of Illinois, which I think is important. Next step. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, I think this really just sort of speaks to more about what I've already said. There was committee meetings that happened. There was work towards sort of seeing what future resiliency looks like, how the department can implement this stuff into design standards. You know, I don't think we got necessarily as much assurance as we probably could have. I think with the continuation of the funding and the Bulletin 76, the movement from IDOT is that we need to start to integrate these mitigation practices into our design standards full stop. And I think the demonstration we have here with this plan is going to help with that. Overall, just what does this look like for return on investment, cost effectiveness, all those kind of, you know, buzzwords, if you will. If we're continuing to deal with on-road flooding, that's something that we need to address right away. Scour, all of that is important. And those performance metrics are going to be able to be tracked and shown from the tool. So next up. Slide. And that's Adam. Let's picture Adam. And he's going to talk about the 2027 freight plan.
All right, thanks, Chris. We did have one question. Well, it looks like we got a couple of questions actually. So it says the RIP focused on, is the RIP focused just on state roadways, or are there other assets and owners of transport assets among the other modes of transportation?
Man, did anybody online also feel like Adam sounded like a robot, or was that just me?
Just you.
AI.
Oh my Lord. I think it is just me.
Can you hear us, Chris?
I'm going to try and hang up and
That's all right. We'll table these questions and we'll send those answers out after the meeting. So thanks, Chris. Great presentation. We're gonna get moving here though. We are running a little behind. All right. Well, I'm back. Yeah. So I'm gonna talk about the freight plan. Like I said, we're behind a little bit, so I'm gonna kind of speed through this pretty quickly. The freight plan's coming. If you want to look at our past freight plan, you can go out to our website. We've got an annual report out there if you're interested to see what we've done so far since the 2023 plan was approved by FHWA. So that's all out there with our actions and strategies and kind of our accomplishments. It also has information on our competitive freight program too, so you can see the projects and the progress made with those as well. So next freight plan, right? So they're due every 4 years. So 2023 was when the last one was approved. So 2027 is when the next one is required to be approved. So we're in that process right now and starting working on that. So ISFAC obviously is a big part of that. So that will be pretty common as part of a discussion topic moving forward, probably for the next year in our ISFAC meetings. And so it's going to evaluate our freight system, go into our trends, opportunities, and investments, kind of look at the future of Illinois' freight system, whether we're changing modes or what commodities are changing, whatever it might be. So that's going to look into there. And then we're going to establish our strategies and action items for Illinois. Yep, so it's going to be due April of 2027. Like I said, we're just starting now, so we're a little slow to the get on this, but we hope to get it done on time. We're going to be developing a freight dashboard. We had one last time, but we're going to do one. This one's going to be it's going to be open to the public. I think last time you had to get approval to be part of it, but now we're going to make it a kind of an open source document. And yes, we're going to be updating our freight map as well, which had all our resources on there. And then we'll be working on our next fiscally constrained freight plan, or our competitive freight program. So that's probably where we're going to go out for a competitive call for both internal and external applicants. That's going to be in development right now. We're still waiting a little bit on USDOT to come back, or basically to get a infrastructure bill funded. So once that comes back, we have an idea of what we're going to get as far as funding wise, then we'll start developing our program. So yeah, kickoff is going to be here really shortly for our next plan. Yep, we'll be doing that with ISFAC. Again, engagement plan. So we'll be probably touching base with a lot of our members here on the call and asking to come to be part of surveys or focus groups, things like that. And this one's a little bit different. We're doing this in coordination with our rail plan. So we're working with the rail plan to do this kind of in tandem. So they'll be, I guess they're more in parallel than they're going to be just kind of be done at the same time. So they share a lot of similarities and, show that there's a coordination between the two. A lot of others, not to say a lot of other states, but some states do it this way. And we're going to try it this way and see how well it works. So with that being said, I did that really quickly. Just need to make up some time here. Is there any quick questions before we move on?
I have one quick question.
Hold on.
One quick question. Will the new freight plan take into consideration the fund balance that we have in our road fund? I mean, I know we talked about this about getting projects out quicker, but we're at a point now where we've made investments to the state. We're not seeing those getting invested. Is that going to be addressed in this, or are we only looking at just the freight movement itself?
That could be part of this.
I would like for that to be at least somehow tied into that we have been, we're sitting here since 2019 and we all wanted to make investments and the investments aren't happening fast enough. I think that should tie in here somewhere is my recommendation.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, we'll look into that. And I know that's kind of some of the stuff that comes out of the Blue Ribbon Commission in the hopes of progressing things and moving things faster and getting things out the door that we've been trying to do for quite a while. Any other questions? You can raise your hand, unmute yourself, or put a question in the chat. All right, well, if there are none, we're going to move on. Next up, we have the Maritime Administration. We have Travis Black speaking on upcoming things for MARAD. Travis?
Thanks so much for having me today. I've been here a few times, but just going to give a high-level update of some of the Maritime Administration and USDOT grants and programs and the status of them. If you go to the next slide, actually you can skip the next one and go to the next. So since we last met, we've had Secretary Duffy this last year. In December, Captain Stephen Carmel became our administrator, and they continue to lead our organization. And a lot of the discretionary grants are made at those levels, along with the staff reviews and recommendations. Next slide. Just to remind you, we're a non-regulatory agency. We were set up to promote, foster, and develop the maritime industry, and this supports the nation's maritime economic and national security needs. Next slide shows our regional presence. We have regional gateway offices, of which the state of Illinois is part of 3 different gateways. The Inland Waterway Gateway is actually split into 2 regions, but I cover the Mississippi, Kaskaskia, and Illinois rivers. The Great Lakes Gateway covers the Great Lakes, and then the Inland Waterway Gateway in Paducah covers the Ohio River. But you have 3 people working for you typically. Right now, I'm the acting director for the Great Lakes Gateway as well. So next slide. One of our primary things that we're working on and trying to establish in that promotion, foster, and develop is infrastructure. The next slide talks a little bit about the USDOT resources that are available. We have a Navigator website that gives instructions and communication about applying for grants, planning for those grants, and then the delivery, how those grants work in general. The next slide talks about one of the major Department of Transportation discretionary grant programs that was actually available this year. The Build Notice of Funding Opportunity was earlier this year. The applications were due February 24th. And these grants are competed amongst all modes. So we had $1.5 billion in FY 2026 monies. And this is for programs that are, or awards that are at least $1 million in rural areas, 5 million in urban areas with a maximum award size of 25. Ports are eligible for this. I always encourage the ports to apply. Typically or historically, we've received about 8 to 12% of those funds for ports. So if you look at that, that's $150 million. That is an opportunity. The next slide talks a little bit about one of our, more talked about programs, which is the Port Infrastructure Development Grant Program. It is a program that supports the efficient movement of commerce across the docks. It's safety, efficiency, and reliability. Typically, it's 80-20. Federal share is 80, 20% would be local. There are situations where there are waivers for that, or people request that, they're approved. Since its inception, we've had over $2.25 million. Just this last week, we announced the awards for the FY 2025, long awaited. We had 2 grants here in Illinois that were approved, one in Kaskaskia for a little over $11.2 million for a new South Dock improvement. And then in Seneca on the Illinois River, also a little over $11.2 million for a new fertilizer storage, blending and bagging facility, and upgraded rail siding and truck circulation routes. So Illinois has been relatively successful in this program. We have an ongoing active notice of funding opportunity with applications due June 1st. Those that were not awarded this last round in 2025, I've encouraged all of my applicants to apply or try to schedule a debrief. Just because you're not selected does not mean you weren't a good project, but we would like you to have the best chance. So we do debriefs for the unsuccessful applicants and tell them where their evaluation looked like last time, how you could improve it, and move forward. The next slide talks about our U.S. Marine Highway Grant Program. I've actually got 3 different slides. So this is a program on the next slide. It talks about our designated routes. Generally speaking, the Secretary of Transportation has designated all maritime transportation navigable waterways in the country as a designated. And to be eligible for this grant program, you have to serve 2 or more points on this network. So a private terminal or public terminal can come in. They can apply for the grants and receive them. Primarily, this is for equipment. Just this is a very small grant program, but we have a lot of services and things that can improve and basically help the waterways compete against the other modes of transportation through the Marine Highway Grant Program. I should have mentioned the PIDP grant program, the active notice of funding opportunity is just under $500 million for this round. But we should, the next slide talks about eligible entities. This is very similar to the same list that we had for PIDP, except in this case, the private sector can apply directly for these grants, and so they don't need a public sponsor. The next slide talks a little bit about the maritime industry, and one of the grant programs we have for that is called the Small Shipyard Grant Program. It is also an active notice of funding opportunity. We've got $35 million for grants to revitalize shipyards. Those eligible shipyards apply. They basically have to have less than 1,200 production employees, which in the inland waterway is typically the case. They have to serve or support the revitalization of vessels, and they don't have to necessarily construct new vessels, but if they service them and build them, they're eligible to apply for this. Typically, we have the maximum award size is not specified, but it's typically about $1 million. And so we should have 25 to 35 projects selected this time. The next slide talks a little bit about some of the things that that Navigator website talks about, how to compete for our grants, really trying to describe and write a compelling story that's specific to the requirements of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. These applications are reviewed by a variety of people looking at different things. And so communication of the impact of this grant is really vital. And we have various webinars, and if you want to reach out to me, I can also help steer you and help you as you complete your applications. The next slide talks a little bit about our workforce development and what we're trying to do to improve the maritime industry and that national security needs. We have programs, and we also support the state and the National Maritime Academies. We have the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York that we run. And then there's other state academies that we also support. The next slide talks a little bit about our engagement. I'm just trying to go quick, but as I mentioned, one of the primary things that I do in the field is work on infrastructure development. We do a lot of outreach. We also participate in maritime security, emergency preparedness, and supply chain resiliency, etc. The next slide describes more fully kind of the relationship between headquarters and the gateway offices and how we work together with our partners to improve the maritime transportation system. And then the last slide is my contact information. So be glad to answer any questions if there are any, but thank you for having us for this update.
All right, thanks, Travis. Yeah, are there any questions? Nothing in the chat. Like I said, you can mute yourself and ask a question or put it in the chat. Well, it doesn't look like we have questions. So thanks, Travis. Really appreciate it. A lot of great information there. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, we've just got our open kind of conversation component. So if you want to scan the QR code, you can submit a question, you can ask, or you can just unmute yourself. It's kind of like this is just open discussion. So anybody wants to come off mute, talk about a topic. All right, we've got our first person.
BJ Murray with IDOT, Bureau of Planning, Maritime Transportation Section Chief. Just to let everybody know that's on the call that tomorrow through our professional transportation bulletin, we will be posting an advertisement for a port program phase 1, phase 2 engineering services contract. So it's a 3-year, $3 million contract. So anybody who's interested, please take a look at that. And that's to provide services to not only to IDOT, but to our port districts as well. So just FYI.
All right, thanks, BJ. One thing I wanted to bring up was Freight Week STL is going to be June 8th through 12th. So if you guys are interested in that, there's a lot of great presentations and tours and all kinds of good stuff as part of that conference. So go out to their website and check that out. But it's Freight Week St. Louis, or STL. Anybody else have questions, concerns, topics they'd like to address? All right. I'll also say there is I believe FRA just issued a notice of funding opportunity for the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program for approximately like 1.15 billion. So that's a lot of money out there for grade crossings. So if anybody's interested in that, that's out there. I would like to also offer up our freight team here that if anybody's interested in having us come speak at a conference or at a meeting, we're more than willing to come and meet and talk and help where we can. So that's just an option. So you can reach out to myself, Brenda, or Mike if you'd like to. All right. Anybody else? Anything in the chat? Okay. I've got a couple more things here. Let's see here. I'll just go ahead and mention our next planning conference is set for September 2nd through 4th. So if anybody's interested, you can just Google Fall Planning Conference 2026. You can go out to the website and register. It's free. It's going to be in Bloomington Normal this year. ISU Bone Center, so a Bone Student Center. So that's going to be a kind of a cool place for us to be. First day's focus is going to be a transit workshop, so that ought to be really interesting, especially with the new NETA program. We will have freight breakouts. There'll be some tours of some, from what we look at so far, some freight related tours, so it could be interesting. Trying to look at, I think we've looked at the Ferrero Chocolate Factory as one. They have an incredible amount of freight that comes in on rail and truck, come in and out. So that would be really interesting to see. And it's just a great time, a lot of networking opportunities, and just a lot of good information shared there. So if anybody's interested, please go out to our website and sign up. Like I said, I don't know if I said it or not, it is free. So you can come free of charge. Does cost hotel rooms and things like that. But
Is there free chocolate at the chocolate place?
there may be free chocolate. I cannot guarantee that at the current moment, but maybe. What else? Oh yeah, and yeah, like I said, yeah, good point, Brenda. Tickets did go fast last year. I think we had 225 seats available, and those sold out over a month in advance. So if you are interested in going, I would highly recommend signing up now. All right. Anybody else? Last call. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate you. We had a lot of great speakers here today and a lot of great conversations. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, Scott. I see
Thanks,
Scott.
Adam.
All right.
Yeah, I posed the question in the Slido as well, but was just wondering, you mentioned a May freight planning 2027 session. Is that scheduled yet? When will that be? Where will that be?
Yeah, no, so the plan is to have the plan done by April of 27. We are just kicking off the freight plan right now. So we haven't set anything up as far as engagement and anything like that. So we're just starting now. So you guys will all be in the loop as we get that going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, have a good rest of your week. We'll see you next quarter.
Thanks, Adam.